Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Miami Book Hub. I'm your host, J. Adrian Betancourt, urban planner by day, author and explorer of all things interesting by night. And one of the reasons I got into reading and now more recently writing is because of one of my personal heroes, someone who I met and I worked with in the past as an urban planner when I worked for the city of Coral Gables. That person is Mitch Kaplan. Mitch is a well-known, I would call him the godfather of Miami's literary ecosystem, well-known, not only owner of a bookshop, but one of the co-creators of the Miami Book Fair, and just an all-around cultural treasure here in Miami-Dade County. Mitch Kaplan. Mitch, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. I'll come back anytime to give me that kind of introduction.
All right, what are you doing tomorrow?
I'll be right here.
All right, and with Mitch is an equally wonderful cultural asset here in our community, someone who I'm just meeting for the first time, but is very well known throughout Miami's literary ecosystem, is Jonathan Plutzik. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Really great to be here. And I will come back anytime because you said equally important to Mitchell Kaplan. So
absolutely,
I'm grabbing hold of that.
You're the Mitch Kaplan of Miami Beach. Yeah. And I forgot to mention, so Jonathan is the co-owner of the Betsy Hotel.
Thank you.
In South Beach. And the Betsy is right there on Ocean Drive and 14th. Is that correct?
On iconic Ocean Drive between 14th and 14th Place.
So gentlemen, welcome to the program. And thank you for making the trek all the way from Miami Beach. And Mitch, I don't know that you're
I live not far away, but it was really great. It's great to be here. And thank you for bringing me together with my friend Jonathan.
No, of course. And
I respect as much as anyone else in this community.
And people may not know this, but you all work a lot together. So, you know, you clearly are selling books. You created the book fair. You're well known in the literary community. What people outside of the literary community may not know is that the Betsy Hotel is what we call a literary hotel, or perhaps there's another word for it, but you are very much engaged in the literary community here in Miami-Dade County. Tell us, what is it about the Betsy Hotel that brings you to this program?
Well, I would probably answer by saying nearly everything. Yeah. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back. I'm just saying that the sort of the character of the place, sort of what we care about, what's been curated, I think reflects not only our interests, but in many ways reflects the greater Miami community that Mitchell so importantly reflects in his efforts as well. And I was going to say, I've been thinking about obviously sitting down with you today that I know we'll talk about the distinction between a bookstore and a hotel, but, and I hope I say that it's in a way that doesn't offend Mitchell, which is hard to do, by the way, that if you were sitting in the Betsy in many of our spaces or sitting at Books and Books in Coral Gables, you might be confused about which place you're in a way. And maybe I'm embracing a compliment about the Betsy when I say that, but the reality is, you know, we hope that we attract interesting people into a stimulating, interesting environment, which, by the way, is not entirely consistent with the brand that Greater Miami projects, right. But it turns out to be a reflection of much of the reality of Greater Miami that obviously Books and Books waves the flag on every day.
And you're both not just celebrating books and authors, but you're actually partnering on some programming together. But before we get to that, I mean, to the extent someone out there living under a rock doesn't know about Books and Books, right. What is it?
Well, we started Books and Books. I started in 1982 when the world was a very different place. We were living in an analog world at the time. And you know, I decided, I'm from Miami Beach. I grew up in Miami Beach, but I came back in the late 70s and thought that I would get into literary culture somehow. Authors were always my heroes. And I just felt that I felt so at home dealing in the world of books and the world of writers. But then I realized something as I was doing it. And this is where it dovetails a little bit with what Jonathan was saying. The idea of a bookstore as a third place, the idea of a bookstore being a place where people gather and come together and come and hear people read and talk and ideas are thrown around, is very much what Jonathan has done with the Betsy, which makes it very unusual for a hotel. Right. There are virtually no hotels, maybe a couple, that many of them strive to do what Jonathan is doing, but because it comes from such a passionate place, it's so natural. And from the very moment I met Jonathan and his family, I felt the very same thing, that we both share this idea of wanting to bring community together. And we both use the literary world as a way to do that. Jonathan's extended through Leslie and the rest of his family into the arts too, where they have, this like remarkable photography collection and other things. But when you walk into the Betsy, you are not just in a hotel. You're in a cultural place. And I like to think that people, when they walk into our store, they almost feel a sense of relief. And there's a aha, that they're there, that they know that they can meet people. It's a space in which people can allow the kind of complexities and anxieties of the world at least be at bay for a little while. And so I think that's why Jonathan and I hit it off so well, so early. I also remember the Betsy Ross Hotel, which was the forerunner of the Betsy, because I don't know how many of your listeners out there will at all remember what Miami Beach was like in the late 70s, 80s, even into the early 90s. But there's a wonderful documentary called The Last Resort that people can watch if they want to get a feel for what it is. But I remember the Betsy Ross Hotel, and the moment I stepped into the Betsy and saw what he did with that, I thought, God, this is something really, really special. And to show you what kind of guy he is, and where literature was something that they really felt attuned to, they came to us and asked us to put libraries of books in every room, which was really fun and really kind of remarkable. And now there are libraries all throughout the Betsy.
That's great. And it's more than just that. You have, as I said earlier, regular programming, you have a writer's room, you have all sorts. Tell us about some of the things that the hotel does.
Sure. One quick other example of how we are connected in so many ways is we were very flattered recently because Mitchell asked my wife, Leslie, who has another job and career, but she does two things at the hotel besides giving me lots of good advice. One is she curates all the art, and she actually curates the music that comes out of the ceiling. Two things he's deeply devoted to. And Mitchell asked her recently if she would hang art in the bookstore. And the reason I'm telling you that story, one, we were flattered that she would ask, and I mean, she was really flattered that Mitchell asked, but to sort of emphasize the connection between the spaces, it wasn't like, oh my, what are we going to hang in Mitchell's store? Although she did think about it a lot. It was like, what would we like to hang in Mitchell's store that we like, because we knew it would connect to what was important to Mitchell. So again, trying to reinforce that sense of very similar spaces as to character. Again, without overstating it or taking credit for something that Mitchell's done spectacularly that we haven't. Well, we do have a writer's residency program, and we've welcomed more than 1,500 writers in residence. They come 2, 3, 4 days, 5 days at a time. Again, most writers are not necessarily just writing; they're teaching, they're doing other things to support their lives. So, we have to schedule that stuff well in advance, and some can only do a few days. By the way, they can be productive or not. Productive in any way you measure productivity, which means they could write something or just think. We're not checking on them, but we're very welcoming of them, and actually particularly proud because our staff, our team, is as excited about looking after them, if I can use that term, as we are. So we have that. I often say that, as a place of hospitality, it's easy for us to be hospitable. Very often, most people and groups are looking for a place to convene. To people just simply to say, yeah, we have a couple chairs and a table and something to eat and drink. That's like a big deal.
Especially today.
Especially
digital
today.
World, yeah.
Right. And so, in small ways, 6 or 8 people want to gather for breakfast to talk about something that's important to them and to us, broadly defined. Not that we're vetting them around that most of the time. But so we do a lot of events, frankly, on property. Tomorrow or tonight, I'm sorry, we're hosting an event for Miami, the great poetry festival that frankly, physically in many ways began at the Betsy, not taking credit for the creation of it. Scott Cunningham, went to Alberto Barwood at the Knight Foundation. Two Wesleyan guys bonded about the importance of going to do this, and they went. But Scott came to us very early on and said, kind of helps, again, convening space, meeting space, rooms to stay in, et cetera. And tonight's event is celebrating 10 years of association, which we're lucky to have been part of, between O Miami and Cave Canem, the group that publishes Poets of Color. And that's been going on here. And my sister Deborah, by the way, who curates so much culturally at the Betsy, would give you the more precise answer. But I think we're celebrating a decade of that relationship. The O Miami one is even longer. But that's just one example that happens to be occurring tonight. People need and want and are grateful for, and we're excited to have them, for places to convene. We need to balance that obviously against our business management things, because there are companies that want space and so forth. But it's really having space. I mean, that's the simplest way to define what our role is, and an appreciation for the fact that Miami and Miami Beach, again, I think are underappreciated as a place of books and literature and arts and culture in a really, really dramatic way.
Now, was it intentional from day one to kind of create this literary hotel, or is it something that evolved over time? And what was your inspiration for it?
Well, there are two sets of inspiration. I mean, one is I have to credit my parents. My father died when he was very young, but was a poet, and so obviously that's important. As I mentioned, I think before we got on camera, that my mother passed away middle of last year at 106, and she was widowed in 1962 with 4 young kids, and an incredible woman, if I may say that about her. Came as a baby from the Ukraine, and for her, if you sort of think about life's pyramid, the guys at the top of the pyramid. By the way, the guys at the bottom were the money guys. Money bad, a little bit of a communist. Money bad, creativity good. So the people at the top of the pyramid were creative folks in her mind, and how we were brought up, frankly. And at the very top of the pyramid, of course, the point of the pyramid were poets. Goes without saying, my father being a poet and she being so devoted to him. But that was how our lives were shaped, frankly, about what was the hierarchy of importance in life. And the other thing I would say about the Betsy and its creation is, I'm a big believer in management by walking around. What you observe actually matters. And let's go back to the sort of brand of Miami Beach and Miami. The brand that has been projected doesn't properly capture the diversity and all the ways you measure diversity, the depth and interests of the community. And I stood out front and I saw who was walking by, and I'm going to say it was us. And I don't mean us by 3 men or 3 white men, I mean us meaning people of all ages and all shapes and sophisticated and young, but it was lots of things. It wasn't just young women in bikinis with a glass of liquor in their hand, which is kind of what we were projecting.
Right.
By the way, that has its place too. It was a place of sophistication, and frankly, I'll say one more thing as an older guy now, which is, what we picture as a retirement community is different today, even though some of us are not young. Like 70 is the new 45 or whatever the right words are. And we have a lot of really energetic, active people, active readers, active people in terms of appreciation of music and the arts more broadly, theater, et cetera. And again, as a place of convening, it's easiest for us to be that. Last thing I would say, at the risk of being a little bit long-winded, I've been quoting the great hotelier, one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 of his generation, Ian Schrager. I saw a clip recently where he talked about the future of the hotel business, which he said was really in the experiential rich boutique hotel, period. That people want to be stimulated. By the way, I don't want to speak for Mitchell, but people want to go into his bookstore and be surrounded by books. Some of them want to buy books. Some of them want to sit and read a book surrounded by books and other people reading books. And people want to be in our hotel. We have live music 9 times a week. They want to hear the piano keys tinkling and They want to see other interesting people around them of all ages, speaking all language. They want to go into their room and see, frankly, 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 books on the bookcase. By the way, we had more in each room pre-COVID. That was an issue for us a little bit, but we still have them in every room, and we have a real library that's separate and distinct that has many more books in it. We have a librarian on staff, not full-time, but she goes into every room and goes into the library to make sure everything is orderly and people haven't left behind inappropriate things. And so it's a whole environment, but it's reflective of, frankly, the world that we see, the world we actually live in. And the good news is you can measure its wisdom in a business sense of doing so. And by the way, I'm saying that a million mistakes later, so I'm not claiming not having stumbled a lot, is that people really respond to it in a very differentiated way by coming to see us, or frankly, how the world, like Ian Traeger, evaluates hotels today versus how they might have evaluated them 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
What's the quote? No one will remember what you say. They will remember how you make them feel. And one thing about both of your establishments is you feel something when you walk into them. It feels like a warm hug. You feel the depth. You feel the intentionality and everything that went into it. It's not just another store, another hotel. It feels like home, in a way. And I just love what you've done. And Mitch, you've been doing this for a long time. So you were inspired by the authors that you loved and grew up in, but why specifically a bookstore? Why did you go in that direction, and why Coral Gables?
Well, a few things. Before I start that, I want to say that what Jonathan described is not something that you can manufacture.
Absolutely.
If you tried to do that, it would seem false. It would seem all of that. And he talked about his influence, and he's probably too embarrassed to bring it up. But I want to reiterate, I have this in my own personal library. So I brought it knowing that Jonathan would be here. And this is a book that came out in England called 5 American Poets. And it's and Chaim Plutzik is one of those 5 American poets that's highlighted, with William Stafford and Lewis Simpson and Howard Nemerov. And Jonathan's father is quite a accomplished and renowned poet, who I think if he hadn't died so young, we would probably know him the way we know so many others, like Frost and the others that we remember. So it came from Jonathan as that passion. And so the reality of a space, all of this is infused in that. And I think that's what happened with me. I was an English major in college. The history, something clicked when I took 20th century world lit. And I realized at the center of almost every single literary movement was a bookstore in one way or another. We all have heard of Shakespeare and Company in Paris, right? Sylvia Beach, who published James Joyce's Ulysses. It's where all the Lost Generation came to. English language bookstore in Paris. In the 30s and 40s, fighting the censorship wars, were people like Francis Stelloff in the Gotham Book Mart, which was right in the Diamond District, where it ended up was on was it 53rd Street in New York, I believe. And she was this amazing woman. And then, of course, in the 50s, you had the Beats going to City Lights with Ferlinghetti and all of that. And that was kind of firmly in my mind, in my romantic view of what a literary life would be like. And I tried other things. I went to law school for a little while. I taught high school. And I just kept being drawn to this idea of trying to create something that would be meaningful in a community. And I think part of it was, if you remember what 1980 in Miami was like, or if you've read about it, where you had Marielle, you had the McDuffie riots, you had the beginning of the cocaine trade, you had a couple years later, Time magazine writing Miami, Paradise Lost with a big question mark. We were a failing community. And I think somewhere in the recesses of my mind, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be part of where you grew up and help build it in some particular way. I don't know that I consciously thought that, but as Jonathan mentioned, we were always underestimated. Nothing serious happened here, and I early on remember in those days you had to order everything manually and all of that. I remember ordering in all of these kind of not esoteric, but small presses, bringing them in. And one day there was a very sophisticated New York publisher browsing in our original store a couple of years after we were open. And Herman Broch wrote a book called The Death of Virgil, which was published in this really beautiful translation, this beautiful edition. And we carried it. And I remember him coming in and showing his wife going, "They have this." And I remember thinking to myself, now that probably will resonate as a positive for Miami down the road somewhere, that you were able to find this book in this place called Miami, where, as Jonathan points out, people were only thought to, be in bikinis or, have plastic surgery or whatever. And so it's been a gift. I've had a gift to be able to, take a passion that I had, be surrounded in a world that I just love being surrounded by. And at the same time, in the hometown that I grew up in, watching it come to life and meeting, people like Jonathan who've helped do that and bring their own special sauce to this group, to this place.
Can I jump in for
Please.
two really quick things? One is only because it occurred this morning, which is a couple came up to me to thank me for their stay from London. And he wanted to let me know that he had stayed in room 251 and he had left behind the book, I think, The Horse. And he told me, I just wanted to say what a fantastic book that is. And I've left it in the bookcase. I'm interested to see, because I'm making my reservation for the next day, to see whether it'll be there when I come back. And I said, I can't promise, because people take them. They take something and they leave something.
I was going to say, is that actually encouraged? Or is...
Well, yeah. Well, we absolutely, we started with we almost giggle about it now that, because we have this library and we have the books in the rooms that people would take a book and they come to the front desk as they're checking out and saying, I've got this book, and they buy. And now we actually take just this joy in the fact that people will leave a book, take a book.
Yeah.
By the way, it's all fun and great, and it all works out, and it all works out in the end. But so that was just a sweet example of what it means for someone to find a book in their room. They care about it. This is the business Mitchell's in. Indirectly the business we're in. But we invited the representatives of the Academy of American Poets. I don't know when it was 5 or 6 years ago or something, for the weekend. The executive director, number 2, right? Mitchell was a partner in that exercise, and they brought one of their board members who lived in Naples, and we just did a series of dinners just to expose them, because again, even those guys who are in the business, I don't mean this critically, I'm just saying, they don't think of Miami or Miami Beach as the place. And what I remember is what the executive director said to me on the way out. I'm so pleased. So a series of dinners, with academic leaders from FIU and UM. I would say academic, I mean literarily oriented academic leaders. He said, I'm so glad that we decided last minute to invite our board member from Naples, because when we get to the board without his input, they would never believe what actually is happening here. Because we actually kind of ran out of chairs at the table in terms of we had so many interesting, and in consultation with Mitchell, like, who should we invite to dinner to meet these folks? Actually, we didn't have a problem identifying enough people. We had a problem saying who should we
Yeah.
invite and who we should leave out. This is an incredible
and an incredible literary community.
Yes.
I mean,
It's beyond just people who like to read, right? We have great writers and authors
Yes,
here.
exactly.
It started out where most of the writers who are writing here were genre writers, amazing writers like Charlie Williford, and you can even put Carl Hiaasen and Dave Barry in those things. But what's happened now is we have poets, we have fiction writers, we have people who are from the Caribbean who are living here and writing books. We have homegrown Miamians who have, come from the various diverse cultures that are here and have written books. But when I think of the 46 years that we've been in business, and I think about all of the different events that we've done, almost every single one of them is an FU to that horrible sense that there's no culture here in Miami. I mean, we did something that I think back on and I'm going, wow, what were we? We had every living Nobel Prize winning poet. We invited them to come here to Miami. Wow. And we did that. I found the program again. And only one of them wasn't able to make it, Joseph Brodsky. But it was Derek Walcott, it was Miłosz, it was, and Octavio Paz. And they were young, quote, young poets introducing them, like Ed Hirsch. We're no longer young.
Right.
But we did it at the old, when the Lincoln Theater had just turned into the New World Theater. So it was in the 90s at some point. We sold out in a minute. Tickets were $20. People were scalping tickets on Lincoln Road to go into this thing. And, you know, that was happening in Miami and Miami Beach, which, you know, had suffered so greatly in terms of the way the rest of the world viewed them, viewed us. And so I think, you know, I always defend this place and say that we have as rich a culture as anywhere else you can find. I mean, when can you can go to the ballet, you can go to the, you can go hear, you can go hear music, you can, you know, you have I mean, it's.
Look at Art Basel and Wynwood and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we do
arts and culture abound.
We do 400 author events a year just at our bookshop, not to mention the book fair, which brings in another 600 writers. When Jonathan talks about the 1,500 writers that have come to the Betsy, they're not just writers. I mean, they are just writers, but they are some of the, they champion young writers who became superstar writers. I always argue, and I don't know that we've ever talked about this, but part of the growth of Miami as a place, who promulgates that view but writers? So we've all been bringing all these writers down here. They take a look at what's going on. They go, oh my God. They go home, they go to their magazines, they go wherever, and they write about Miami in some particular way. It's just, it's kind of amazing to be thinking about.
You know, Mitchell could tell the story I'm about to tell probably 10,000 times, but I will tell you one quickly. Our writer's room was dedicated by Billy Collins, the former Port Laureate of the United States. But the more fun story is our first writer was Dwayne Betts.
Right.
And Dwayne stole a car with some buddies when he was a teenager. One of his buddies had a gun, and Dwayne went off to jail. I want to say for 8 years, and found books. Again, he's our first writer. Now we're smiling about it too because we had an African American writer, dreadlocks. You know, I'm saying this in the sense that now we have to roll back to the 12 or 13 years ago. And the story, of course, is he left the room to go look for a coffee maker that didn't work. And who's this guy at 2:00 in the morning walking around? Well, Dwayne Betts, has become one of the most prominent voices in the country. Oh, by the way, was given by the foundation, Mellon Foundation, was given a $5 million grant to put libraries in prisons because he understood the significance of having books available to people who are incarcerated. But I also want to say, obviously for him at that time, getting the room for 4 or 5 or 6 days was a big deal. But what's also interesting to me is even prominent authors, and we're lucky enough to get bunches of those as well, who I'm going to use the term don't need the money. They don't need the freebie, but they actually equally value the space and the opportunity to go do what they do, meaning the solitude, the contemplative space, the swaying palm tree, whatever it is. So, some need it because they otherwise can't get away and can't get off from their job or whatever. But there's this common thread of, creating a creative space to do one's work. And it may or may not be tied, sometimes it is, to a reading in Mitchell's store or not. But kind of it's always thematically the same, just the joy of seeing one of these writers, and by the way, I would add, we see over time, you can't predict where they're going to be productive. And I will share one quick story. My father went to Trinity College in Connecticut undergraduate. And so one of the things we did for fun at one point, this is this range of different authors, we thought to ourselves, well, we should do something to honor his connection to Trinity. We approached them and said, we want the faculty to pick the best senior writer every year. And we did that for about 5 years. That's a very extreme example of a young writer still in development, but we thought that would be fun. And faculty will pick somebody who's frankly deserving.
And you brought them to the
And we brought them to Betsy. We gave them a residency. We did that for 4 or 5 years. And the first one, which I remember distinctly, by the way, we discourage writers coming with partners. This is a working thing. By the way, they're free to do nothing, but it's not a vacation in the respect that you bring a partner. But we permitted her to bring her mother because she was a young writer, and we figured it was appropriate, chaperone, all that stuff. But I met her for a drink, some lemonade or something. Not the mother, the daughter. and I said, this is great. I was happy to have you here. But any complaints? She says, I only have one. She says, the housekeeper keeps knocking on the door, coming to make the bed, and I write in bed. But I use that story also to say, some sit at the bars, some go to the beach and sit on lounge chairs, some lock themselves at the desk in the writer's room, which I am going to say the desk in the writer's room is my father's desk, which I didn't think was important to do, but my sister Deborah did. And actually what's fun now to think about is not that it's my father's desk, although that's sweet to those of us in the family. It's that the 1,500 writers who came have all sat at that desk.
And been inspired.
And yeah.
And the other thing I think too, that me being here for as long as I have, Jonathan doing what he has been doing, is I think both of us feel a real responsibility to bring the written word even outside the walls of our places. And Jonathan has a foundation. We've just started the Books and Books Literary Foundation, where we're bringing books and authors into Title I schools. I know you've done work with schools left and right too, because we know from being in Miami that there's great disparity, all over the place. And so the idea is, what can we do to help bridge those gaps in any way that we can, given what we've been able to develop and the resources that we have, both financial, but also in terms of who we know and how we can maneuver certain things. So the joy if you've never seen anything like it until you've seen a bunch of fifth graders getting a book signed to them, and then they walk out with a book.
Yeah.
I heard a story that somebody who was an adult was given a book by somebody. We want you to have this, and that person said, I have never been given a book by anyone, and I don't want any of these kids getting out of school without saying that they haven't been given a book, and it creates this kind of joy because, as I get older, the idea is, how do we mentor those who are younger? How do we make sure the next generation of readers are there? Or how do we sort of spark that love of books, that love of reading that's been so important in our lives, all three of us. So, it's a wonderful way and an ethical way of being in business, but at the same time understanding that there's a greater mission that we all have in one way or another.
Another quick Miami story. So we have actually done programming with FIU for a long time around exile writers. My wife grew up in Africa, and that triggered a dialogue. And so, run by a couple academic leaders at FIU, and bringing in very periodically writers in exile to find all kinds of different ways. And I've gone to some of those and, made introductory comments. But what I'm struck by, frankly, is the composition of the students in the room. Right. And more than their composition, how attentive and engaged and interested they are, which causes me to tell one other related story, which is I had an opportunity to sit one day some years ago, because of course he's not in that position anymore, with Mark Rosenberg when he was president of FIU. Very, very early in my relationship with him, and my son I will say, attended an Ivy League institution, and I was here, and I had just left my son on campus. And I said to Mark, making small talk, frankly, with one of the most important academic leaders in the country, Mark Rosenberg. I said, I just come from X, and the faculty growth is going to be Y, and give me your thoughts on what's happening at FIU. And he said to me, Jonathan, we have more students at FIU than the entire Ivy League combined.
Wow.
Okay, and I love telling that story to my friends in the Northeast in particular, because they begin to calculate.
Yeah, I knew it was big. I didn't realize it was that.
Don't bother calculating. It's true.
Yeesh.
Okay, it's true. And our institutions here, oversimplifying, also represent the future of America.
Mm-hmm.
I went to one graduation with Mark of the class at FIU, and every name that got called out, 20 people stood up and screamed.
I will echo that with
Yeah.
my involvement with Miami-Dade College, for instance.
Yes.
I mean, if FIU has that many,
Yeah.
there's like 3 times more.
I think
than
it's the
FIU.
largest institution of
It's
higher
the
education,
largest
Yes.
in the country. But again,
and one of the best.
Again, you can start with nothing. You go there, and
Yeah.
then you can end up anywhere. In terms of that, and we cannot forget that. And the other thing that I really need to make sure that we point out in any public forum that I'm in is that we have to make sure that we don't give in to the forces who want to stifle reading in one way or another. Because what Jonathan just said is so important, and that is we need to learn other people's stories,
Mm-hmm.
where they're from, how did they get here? We're in such a diverse community that if we don't understand each other's stories, we will stay apart.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is the strategy, is to keep
Absolutely.
people apart.
Divide and conquer.
And so what we want to make sure, particularly in a state like Florida, we're a little bit lucky in Dade County because we have a mayor
Mm-hmm.
that believes in this, so she controls the libraries. But imagine being up the state where you don't have a county mayor, and the libraries are completely under attack.
Yeah.
And we just have to make sure that the freedom to read is sacrosanct, and that we make sure that wherever it is being attacked, that we speak out against it.
And you've been doing that, and I know that. And
Well, we've been trying to.
Many of you in the trenches,
we've
fighting that good fight. So
we've been trying to as much as we can. But there are some, I'm on the board of something called the National Coalition Against Censorship, and there are some shadow laws, or I shouldn't say shadow, but these what do they call them? They're written laws by ALEC and other people that are that they would love to see passed.
Right.
And they're already written, and they're venal.
Mm-hmm.
They're absolutely, it turns everything we're doing into a crime, in terms of selling the kind of books that we sell. So we have to really be careful about all of that. And one of the ways of doing it is to get young people excited. And I think the biggest change that I've seen in a retail outlet like a bookstore, we used to have a joke. The joke was that we were going to follow our customers to their graves. In other words, the reading public was getting so old that one day a guy would come in, buy a book, he'd walk outside the door, drop dead. We'd have to lock up and leave because of that. But that has changed.
Yeah.
In the last 6-7 years, probably since the pandemic, young people are everywhere. And you probably get that in the hotel too. People coming in, wanting to hang out. It has become the go-to place for young people to want to meet people in a kind of analog world because they're getting tired.
Yeah, it's a reaction.
They're getting completely tired of living in this constant state of anxiety because they don't know what's going to pop up next on their Instagram or whatever. But so I'm very hopeful about what's going to be happening in the future along those lines.
So beyond appealing and supporting our readers, I know you do a lot to also support Miami's local writers and authors. If nothing else, you helped to create the book fair. Gosh, how many years ago now? That was over 40.
This is our 40. This will be our 44th book fair.
And I believe you're both partnered with the book fair and everything you do.
Yeah, definitely.
But
this is the man, though.
No, but the Betsy's been very helpful.
Yeah, so as an aspiring writer and someone who never took a creative writing course, I have to tell you, one of my first resources was the Miami Book Fair. I met with Lisette. She was kind enough to have coffee with me and pointed me in many different directions, and just a wonderful resource. And then, of course, I've attended the fair over the years.
Yeah.
So, great institution, not only for those who want to read, but a great help for those looking to write, particularly those who may not have the background in that. What does the Betsy and what does Books and Books do to help our local kind of writing or writers and up and coming authers?
The first thing we do is
it's a very
first thing we do is
process.
try to give them a presence in the store.
Yeah.
Give them access to a community of other writers as well. One of the things that we're doing really specifically is that we have a writers group that meets once a month. And these are aspiring writers who come and know every angle. Many of them have worked together to get agents. A number of them have gotten published. So it's a support group, and it fluctuates between 25 and 40 people who come that once a month, and they read their work. And those are the kinds of things that we want to really promote as much as we possibly can, and give that kind of support to local people. But primarily for us, it's always been the idea of highlighting, and it goes way back. I mean, it goes back almost to Carl Hiaasen's first novel, the first novel that made him popular, Tourist Season. I remember we put him out there, and he came and did his event, and we had no idea who would really show up, and a lot of people showed up.
He's just a journalist at the time, really, right?
Yeah, he had written a couple of spy.
I didn't mean to say just a journalist, but he was primarily known as a journalist.
And the other thing that's happened is we now have some really spectacular writing programs here.
Yes.
Where we didn't always. FIU, led by Les Standiford, and it's a very diverse, kind of interesting group of writers that have been there. Campbell McGrath, who won the Kingsley Award. Did he win the MacArthur Genius too?
I believe he did.
Yeah, and he's a poet who's there. John Dufresne, and the stability of that program. And then has developed its own program.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
even Miami-Dade. I mean,
Miami-Dade.
Well, LaGrande on
Miami-Dade has a program, and through the book fair, the Miami Book Fair was really first it developed into a week-long program.
Mm-hmm.
We realized that we wanted to be a year-round program. Yes, yeah. And we kept the name Miami Book Fair so people would understand that it's year-round programming, but it stems from the book fair. So we've been doing things all over the place, particularly with writers. We have writing workshops. We're now giving a fellowship.
Mm-hmm. I think that just went out.
It just went out. Like a $50,000 fellowship for someone to live in Miami and write their book.
Maybe they could stay at the Betsy.
No, absolutely.
I think maybe they worked that out. I don't even know if they did or not. But yeah, I mean, it's just, we went from 0 to 100.
Yeah.
It's taken a number of decades, but we are in such a different place right now than where we were back in the day. And it's phenomenal. It's so important and so good.
And it's so supportive. I mean, one of the things I found kind of new to this space is how welcoming everyone has been. I suspect that's not the case in many cities, especially in New York, right? I mean, there is an industry, there's kind of this elitism or this exclusivity, I suppose, surrounding the publishing houses. In Miami, everyone is just, embracing this ecosystem and wanting to be supportive, and it's not so competitive as it is collaborative. That's the sense I've gotten thus far. I mean, do you feel that way? And I would even imagine it's in large part due to you gentlemen and people like you who have built this ecosystem and made it so that it is welcoming and open.
Mitchell's probably a better judge than I am, but I would say I don't want to. We do have a small town quality, which is different than New York, and that I think is a powerful thing. I mean, I think about around us in South Beach, the important arts institutions we have, the World Symphony and the ballet and Miami New Drama, and I don't mean to leave anyone out. So, but it's really a small town. So in that respect, I think very much the case. But I think what's so striking about and reinforcing of the importance of bookstores, frankly, and very few are as important as Mitchell's, is that I think in so many towns, and again, Mitchell will know much more about this than I do because they're his counterparts around the country that he's been comparing notes with for 40 years, that in each of those places, the good ones, and I think there are more good ones than you think, that's why bookstores are so important. That's why books are so important.
I tell you, there's been and to double down on that, there's been a resurgence of independent bookstores that have opened. I think the last figure that was about a month ago is that since COVID, there were like 400 new bookstores that have opened.
That's great.
Around the country, and a very, very challenging. The death of the bookstore I've lived through. I should be dead
multiple times.
10 times. You know, it was the discounters, and then it was Amazon, and then it was digital books was supposed to take over.
But none of them can replicate what you've done, which is that gathering space. And I think that's the key, right?
It's it's funny. You mentioned before that Ian Schrager said, it's the experiential thing.
Yeah.
Whether Ian Schrager said it or not, you'd be doing it.
No.
You know, and people say that about retail. The big thing is experiential retail. I said, that's what it was.
That's what we've been doing for
46 years. We've been doing experiential retail.
I just need that validation, Mitchell.
No, I know. I know. You'd be doing it the same
of
way
course,
anyway.
of course.
It's just that's the you're built. It's all about hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, Jonathan, as you can tell just from hearing, I mean, anybody would love to sit with him and have a drink and talk about whatever is on his mind. And I think that happens in the bookstore as well. And that's what he's about.
Yeah.
I'm in my happy place when I'm sitting I love standing behind the counter and trying to sell books and be with people. I mean, that is what gives us pleasure.
It's
doing it.
Just being human at the end of the day.
No, and I frequently sit in the corner of the Betsy and that dynamic, the exchange that goes on, as it did this morning with a gentleman about a book he didn't know was coming here today.
Do you remember when I met those publishers from Sweden or something?
Yes, 100%.
The husband and wife.
Yes.
They just happened to come off the elevator and, I want to introduce you to these Swedish. And they were like some of the biggest publishers in Sweden.
Wow.
Actually. But it's the beauty of a place like Miami. It's small town enough that there are no bar. People expect you to go up to them. If there's not a bar, there's nobody trying to put on a mask when they're here. And that's a beautiful, beautiful
thing.
It
is. And hopefully we don't lose that. I don't think we will.
And we should say something though, since we're doing it about our
I'm about to lean in and talk about it, but you're free to. That's
no. Jonathan,
you guys like an old married couple. You're finishing each other's thoughts.
Jonathan and I have always wanted. I've always, we were on Miami Beach for 30 years. We were on Lincoln Road. We closed during the.
That was your second store?
It was the second store. We opened in 1989, and I'm from Miami Beach, so for me it was like a thrill to be on Lincoln Road. And the pandemic came, and the world shifted. And the rents were just too much for us at the time. And you can kind of see it on Lincoln Road now where it's kind of gone downhill a little bit. But so Jonathan and I have always been talking about trying to do stuff together and trying to bring some of what we do mingled with some of what he does and what they do at the Betsy. So we started the series, with Books and Books at the Betsy. And we don't know where it'll go. It could go in amazing directions. But we started off by presenting pretty much an author a month. And people have been responding. I mean, the city, people in Miami Beach want to come out and they want to hear some writers.
Well, the first, and I'm embarrassed to say I have to figure out who that first author was.
She was great.
But we had, I believe, 180 RSVPs.
Yes.
Now, by the way, we always get a
little less.
But I think for that first one, we had 100-ish people show up. And the one which is later this week or next, David Archuleta, we wanted to make sure together that we had a big room for this event because he's actually got some prominence because we expect a very large crowd. So the first author, a little less famous, I'm going to use that term if I may.
She was an editor.
Yeah, an editor. That's correct. That's correct.
Editor.
And so there's a great appetite. There's something missing because Books and Books isn't here, and we're trying to, bring that back first in this way with our I'm going to say toe, whole foot in the water. And you can see the response right away.
Sure.
People are thirsting for it. There's more to do. I haven't said this to Mitchell, although I said it to his colleague, Christina, which is, I get all my books and books mail as a consumer. I saw about I forget what it's called, the quiet reading program that you have.
we want to do one.
And which is people just come and they sit
they just read
and they
quietly.
just read in a, on their own, but in a group setting for 30 or 45 minutes. And then
we're going to definitely do that.
and I said to my sister, Deborah, we got to go do that too. Like, why haven't we done this yet? Because all of those things are just, they're enriching for the environment. They're enriching environment, meaning the place that people are in, enriching personally. Obviously, people are doing it. And I know we'll get a positive reaction. And frankly, and I've said this in other settings with Mitchell, but I really believe that it's true. If we do it on the first day, I bragged about 180 RSVPs about our first event. Again, 100 showing up. But frankly, if 10 people show up, that's okay too. That's a
Quality
really
over quantity.
No, it's a really important thing. And there've been, again, plenty of events we've done that if fewer people shown up, and I wish 1,000 showed up, not because I missed them, it's because they missed something that would have enriched them. And so, big or small, each one of these things, contributes to our happiness and to the happiness of people who come.
Well, it's a natural collaboration. So I'm glad it's happening.
Yeah.
And if people want to learn more about that series or about the hotel or Books and Books, where should they go?
I think they can go to either of our websites.
Yes.
Go to
Okay, I think we have that
booksandbooks.com.
scrolling on the screen. But for those who may be listening and not watching,
well, the easy place for us is the betsyhotel.com.
Okay.
And booksanbooks.com. And we have a newsletter that goes out almost 5 times a day.
It's overwhelming how much you have going on. It really is. I look at it, I'm like, what do I pick?
But it goes out a lot. But we have an amazing week this week.
Yeah.
We have some really great writers coming in tonight and through Monday, where we have Rachel, I can't believe I'm blanking on her name, the woman whose son Hirsch.
Oh, yes. Pollan.
died.
Is it Pollan?
Yeah, Rachel Pollan.
Yeah.
And her memoir, she did
Hugely
an amazing
important.
thing on
I read about, she was in New York yesterday, the day
Yeah.
before, really. Can I say quickly too, on May, because you asked earlier about promoting.
We are well over time, by the way, but I could sit here and listen to you for hours.
No, but only because I don't want to leave them out, because we celebrated their 10th anniversary this week, which is, it's SWIM. It's the acronym.
Oh, they're amazing.
It's women poets. That's the headline.
Swim.
But it was their 10th anniversary this week of programs, and we just give them a space and they make it happen. But that's just a little example of what we hope to do in many, many ways.
Well, listen, thank you both for what you're doing and everything you've done.
But listen, I also
Miami wouldn't be the same without you, but I'm going to give you the last word, Mitch.
I just want to thank you for doing this program. It's an amazingly important program to be in Miami because it gives voice to the writers who are here. And also it helps both of us tell people from around the country, if they're thinking of sending someone here, that there's another place where they can be seen and they can be, they have access to.
That was the idea. And listen, mi casa is tu casa. So whenever you want to come on, because we only touch the tip of the iceberg, or if you ever want to co-host, whatever you want to do, this is your house. Please, anything we can do together, I'd love to.
My last thing is, if I may, which may hit the cutting room floor, is that obviously Mitchell is doing all kinds of important things and we're trying to contribute as we can. But this whole arts and culture support dynamic, it doesn't work without government intervention of the good sort.
Right.
Meaning funding things. And we're in an environment at the moment where that's stressed.
Really stressed.
So I just want to sort of pound the table as a last word that our county leadership, our local leadership, our state leadership, can't be weak-kneed in terms of their leaning into and supporting.
We who are involved in culture need to give them support.
Absolutely.
And let people understand.
Yeah, because they have a lot of competing priorities.
A few years ago, the governor literally zeroed out every cultural bit of money that was allocated.
Now, sometimes
we can't
when
allow
the
that
public sector has to step down, we need the private sector to step up. And I know you've both created foundations. If people are interested in donating to either of your foundations, or same websites, Books and Books, and
you can go to Books and Books, and the Betsy.
You have links on.
Well, and the important thing is we've talked about all these things that support of the arts is not supporting a group of dilettantes.
Right.
Supporting the arts is supporting society.
Absolutely.
And elevating the whole community in ways that we frankly desperately need at this moment.
Well, it's about civic engagement.
Yes.
As well. There was an NEA study.
Yeah.
I think it was a number of years ago, but it showed that if you read, not even a full book, but if you read a portion of a book, you have a greater. There's a greater possibility that you'll be civically engaged. If you read a poem.
Yeah.
If you just read one poem a day or a week even, and you'll become more civically engaged.
And we desperately need more of that here. Miami ranks last in the nation in terms of civic involvement.
Ooh,
And I think it begins with reading. I think you're absolutely right.
that's very interesting.
And a more engaged society or more engaged community creates better government, creates better policy, creates better quality of life, and economic opportunity for everybody. So start reading. If you
Amen.
haven't already.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Gentlemen,
Thank
thank you. And again, I'm going to have you
Have fun
back on
editing.
frequently.
Have fun
We
editing
appreciate
this.
Oh, it'll be fun. No, we're running the whole thing, minus the phone going up. So, folks, that's all the time we have here on the Miami Book Hub. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends and family, and stay tuned for future episodes. We have some great guests lined up, authors. We have the new director, newly appointed today, I believe, director of the Miami-Dade Library System, Lydia Lopez. So
Yes.
great programming on the horizon. That's all the time we have. So until next time, folks, keep reading, keep writing, and stay curious, Miami.